Alright guys, what is up? I'm back here with another video, and today we're going to be talking about the best first motorcycles you guys can buy. And this video is designed for beginners, and I'm just going to tell you about each one and tell you my opinion about it. Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and get on the bike, and see you in a second. Alright guys, real quick, I know there's going to be those people in the comments that are going to be like, yo, my buddy started on a 1000. Now look, I'm going to give you good advice. Long story short, don't start on a bike that's too fast for you, because I know there's going to be people in the comments and be like, what do you mean, man? Just don't buy a 300, just get a 600, man. So the first bike I'm going to talk about is going to be for the design for someone that's never ridden at all. And then I'm going to kind of go, it's going to be all for beginners, but I'm going to kind of go more advanced, and I'm going to talk about 5 different bikes, guys. So that's going to bring us into the first bike. This is probably the best beginner's bike. If you have no experience at all, this bike is for you, and that is a Suzuki Tu250x. Personally, I like Japanese bikes because I like reliability, and they're just simple. The parts are cheap for them, so that's always nice. This is more of a cruiser type style of a bike, and the reason why that's good for new riders in specific is because the seat height on the cruiser bikes, they're pretty low to the ground. So you ever been on a motorcycle and you're like, you're kind of reaching for the ground, especially if you're new? That can be kind of uncomfortable. That can kind of make you feel, you know, you're just not comfortable. Reaching for the ground's never comfortable, you know? You feel like you're gonna drop it. It's affordable as well. Found a 2019, it's around $4,600. You can buy a used one and get it cheaper as well. This bike's also not very heavy. When you get on a motorcycle, weight and height is a big deal. So if this bike's not heavy and it's pretty low to the ground, that's good for a beginner. Now the Suzuki TU 250x is more of a around town kind of bike. I wouldn't recommend taking it on the interstate. It's kind of not fast enough for that, and it's actually more dangerous to go on an interstate with a slower bike. I'm not going to get into it too much, but long story short, it actually is. And you know what? As I mentioned, that they have a lot of those bikes in these classes that you're going to take. So if you don't want to make, say you're going to buy this bike new and it's like $4 grand, you don't want to make that $4 grand investment, just get your license first. Make the $300 investment. Then you'll get to ride a bike like that, and then you'll see, hey, this bike's for me, this bike's not for me. So that's always a good way to do it. That's going to bring us in to the second bike, and that's actually the bike that I rode in this class, and that's going to be a Yamaha R3. And the price range for that bike's going to be around, if you buy it new, it's going to be around $5 grand, around 5. You can always buy the bike used as well. So like I said, if you guys are into the sport bikes and you guys are specifically wanting to learn, you know, the sport bikes, the 300 is good. Any 300 is really good, honestly. It doesn't have to be the R3, like I said, but any 300 is going to be good because the throttle is going to be pretty forgiving. It doesn't have a ton of torque. You're not going to just whiskey throttle it. There's a reason why you ride these bikes in the beginner course, because they're forgiving and they're good for beginners. Now the thing with the 300 is, this isn't a bike that people keep for a long time. That's one thing I would say about it, because people typically get used to it and then they want something else. I would rather do that, figure out, hey, is this for me? Because you might ride motorcycles and be like, nah, I don't know if this is for me, because a lot of people sometimes they either drop them or whatever, and then they find out, hey, this isn't for me. So you don't want to get like the most expensive bike right away, and never finance a bike either. Actually, I'm not going to say never. Bikes are a liability. They're not really an asset. You don't really want to be financing them, in my personal opinion. That's going to bring us into the next bike, guys, and that's going to be a Honda Rebel. This is one of the best first bikes, I think. This is another cruiser. Like I said, with the cruisers, they have a low seat height, so you're not going to be reaching for the ground. So if you're a shorter rider, that's going to be a good bike for you. And if you're into cruisers, this is a good bike, and it's not a Harley, and I know that if you guys like cruisers, you probably like Harleys. I mean, who doesn't? One thing about getting a Honda is you just can't beat a Honda. You guys ever heard of that? Can't beat a Honda. Why is that? Because they're so reliable and parts are so cheap for them. And you guys can get the 300 or the 500. If you guys get the 500, I think it's around 40 horsepower, something like that. So you guys can actually take that on the highway and stuff like that. They updated that bike in 2020 and they put LED lights on it, nicer cluster, just some better features. And I believe if you pay a little bit more money, you guys can get ABS braking as well. So that's a really, really good bike for all the reasons I just listed. And that bike was in the class as well. I think I might have seen the 250s. I don't know if there was the 300s, but I saw the Honda 250s they had. And that's going to bring us into the fourth bike, all right? Now this bike is a little bit more advanced. I wouldn't say it's super advanced, but say you're not ready for something like this, but you have a little bit of experience. Rode some friends' bikes, maybe you took the class, you say, hey, I think I'm ready for this, but I don't want a sport bike because it's too fast. Now I'm going to talk specifically about the Kawasaki, and this is kind of like I said, the 650. It's kind of similar to the R7, if you guys know what that is. That's a newer bike. Basically, it's basically this bike, but more practical. It's just basically a more tame version of this bike is basically what it is. That bike's going to cost you around from anywhere from, if you get it new, from anywhere between 72 to 78. I do think it is a bit pricey personally, but compared to the 300, I could see you keeping this bike a little bit longer. The 300 is more of a bike you keep it, you're like, hey, I'm used to this, I got the gist of it, now let me sell it. And like I said, the R7, it's the same thing. Never really seen an R7, but it's essentially the same thing. It's just a more tamed down version. It's supposed to be a practical version of a sport bike is what they tried to do. That's why they stopped making the R6. And the R7 is actually slower than the R6. It's kind of like that 650 I was just talking about. Alright guys, that's going to bring us into number 5, alright? My friend actually just got this bike too, and that is a Kawasaki Z650. Now I've seen people use these for a lot of different things, and I really like this bike. This is one of the best bikes on this list, and let me tell you why. The seating position of this bike is really comfortable, but at the same time, this bike can also handle. So if you wanted to take this bike out for an all-day ride, you could do that. If you wanted to take this bike to the track, you could do that. If you could take a cruiser, you could take a sport bike, and you could combine them, I think you would have this bike. That bike's gonna cost you around, you know, probably like $7,200, and if you want ABS, I think it's like $75, something like that, new, I believe. That's just a ballpark, by the way, guys. This bike is naked as well. It's one of those bikes where it doesn't have all those fairings on the side, but it looks so good. It has a really nice gauge cluster as well, and it's just a really nice looking bike. Now, I know I said 5 bikes, guys, but I'm going to throw one more in there, and that's going to be this bike that I'm on right now. This bike has an A and a B mode, and basically what that is, A mode is full power if you want to just go and get it. B mode cuts the power out, so you have like 50% of the power with B mode. A mode, you have full percent of the power. So if you wanted a sport bike, that right there makes this bike a good bike in my opinion, and they're super reliable. Now you just want to be careful with what year you buy of these bikes. I'd stay away from the 06, 07s, especially if you don't really know that much about them. Just stay away from that bike. Get a like a 2011 and up, and you'll be good. I got this bike for $65 used, and I feel like that's a really good deal. And I got it in 2019. It's a 2015. But yeah, I'm not gonna tell you to start on something like this, but I have seen people do it. Let me give you an example. For me, this was my first street bike, and I'll tell you why. Because I rode dirt bikes my entire life. Not my entire life, but for a long period of time I rode dirt bikes, so I had experience on motorcycles. Like, I knew how to ride motorcycles before I got on this, and I know how dangerous these things are. My friends have had them, my brothers had them, you know, I've had people that have had bikes. I know how dangerous and how fast these things are, so I felt like I was capable of starting out on something like this. Now, not everybody can do that. You know, people are different. People have different skill levels, and everybody learns at a different rate. So real quick, I just want to say a few things. If you guys are watching this video, you're probably a beginner. I started a series on how to ride, so consider subscribing if you guys want to learn how to ride. With this topic specifically, ask me anything you want, man. I'll answer every single question. You know, I've been there before. I was looking for a new bike. Like, which one do you get? If you guys aren't subscribed, you know, like, browse through the channel, see if you say, hey, I kind of like this guy, hey, I don't like this guy. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys for watching, everybody.